Alright guys, welcome back to the channel. So today we got a lot to talk about. So we're gonna talk about the legacy build, converting a X5SA to a Voron Legacy, and I have a lot of information for those who want to attempt this build. I think a couple streams back I mentioned I was gonna stream this build, but you know, it was kind of too much and a lot got in the way then, so I decided just to build it and do a proper video on it, my opinion, the stuff you need, basically all that info. So we'll get into it after the intro. All right. Alright guys, so let's talk about it. So, this is a buddy of mine, X5SA. It was supposed to be a Pro, but they didn't send him a Pro. They sent him a regular X5SA without the Pro rails. And we found that out a little bit later because I helped him set it up. I should have known. But he did contact Tronxy. They did end up sending him the Pro rail stuff. But he tried to install it, and boy, yeah, it was a disaster, for say the least. But I offered to fix it for him. But when he came at that time, I was working on my Voron Legacy, like rebuilding it, removing all the PTG parts for ABS parts, and he saw it, and he really liked it. And so I told him, you know, if you can go ahead and grab me some few more items that I may need, I can convert his into a Voron Legacy as well. And hence why we're here. Now, I was in a live stream, I think when I was building my V2, I kind of mentioned I was going to live stream it, but you know, a lot of stuff happened in the last couple of weeks, to be honest with you, and some stuff I don't want to really get into because it's personal. But you know, a lot of stuff happened, you know, I didn't want to live stream then, and so I decided to just do a video instead. So this video will be packed with information for you guys. I will also have a Amazon affiliate link in the description just to help me out, you know, with the 3D printing stuff, just to support the channel a little bit. And because like I said, most of the stuff that I've bought is out of my pocket, and so it's nice to, you know, kind of get a little bit of a return on the information. But like I said, I'm not really here in it for the money per se, but just for the community, just to help the community out, just to help someone out that is probably frustrated with their X5SA and want to take into a new direction, maybe, you know, turn it into something better. All right, so let's get into it. So in order to convert your X5SA or even a Pro into a Voron Legacy, you're going to need a few things. So obviously we're going to use the same X5SA frame. We're going to also use the linear rods that came with the X5SA, as well as the linear screws and the and all the motors. So that's all you would need. You're not going to use the board. We're not going to use the drag chain from it. We're not going to use the existing extruder from it. Pretty much everything else we don't need. Just the beer frame, the linear rods from the from the Z axis, and also the lead screw from the Z axis, and the motors. Everything else would be new. Okay, what you need additionally, you're gonna need a, I'm gonna use, this is the size I chose to use because it makes more sense. So I'm using a 300 by 300 millimeter bed. I got this 6061 aluminum plate from Amazon for like 27 bucks. Now, keep in mind, 6061 is not the best aluminum plate to use when heated, because depending on who manufactures it, it can warp under heat, okay? Especially if you're pushing like 100 degrees on the bed. hate 80 to 100 degrees. It can warp somewhat. However, we're not passing 80 degrees on this bed, because 80 degrees is when you're printing PETG. And the person, my buddy's only going to be printing PLA and PETG, or an other exotic PETG material. He'll never really print ABS on this machine. It's not meant for that. I don't think the Legacy is meant for that type of thing. It's just a throwback machine with linear rods, and so I don't think you need to be enclosing this. If you want an enclosed machine, go look at the other Vorons. This is specifically for hobbyists. People want to print, stuff like that, bus figurines, gears, that type of thing. It's not meant to print ABS and ABS kind of crazy stuff. Look for the other Vorons for that type of thing. Now, so you're gonna need the 300 by 300 aluminum plate. The reason why I'm using 300 by 300, because even though the original size of this bed is 330 by 330, if you look at the design, you really can't use that, because the motors are inside. They're not outside like the original. So because the motors are now on the inside, you're losing space on the inside. So there's no possibility of you running 330 millimeters. Because if you do, you're gonna basically, once this goes all the way back and home, it's gonna be hanging off here. You're not gonna, it's basically gonna be on top of the actual plate. And I remember in my first Legacy build, I showed you that I used a stock bed and I lost like at least 30 millimeters off the back of the build plate. So it don't make sense to really use a big ass build plate, sorry, excuse my language, when you're not going to be able to use that build space. So for me, I went ahead and did 300 by 300 millimeter. Now you can probably get away with 310 millimeter by 310, like a CR10 kind of bed space. You could, but I went ahead and opted for the most common size, which is 300 by 300, because you have it's a decent size. It's not small, it's not too big. It's the perfect size to make, pretty much print anything on it. Perfect build size. It's very balanced. So that's why I opted for that. I'm using a 200 millimeter silicone heater. So if you look underneath here, using a 200 millimeter silicone heater, because it's 200, sorry, not 200 millimeter, but 200 watts. I'm so sorry. 200 watt silicone heater. Because it's so small, it can be powered by the board. So I don't need a MOSFET, or I don't need an SSR to power that. It can power it directly from the board because it's 200 watt silicone heater. I'm also using the 5-stack PEI sheet, PEI spring steel sheet setup. It is textured PEI on the front and on the back. So yep, I go with that. It sticks very well. It's doing a good job holding on to the print. So yes, definitely recommended. It will give a crazy texture underneath the bottom, but like I said, it works when it comes to holding the print down in place. I set up the bed in the V1.8 setup, so it's a 3-point mounted bed setup. I do recommend it that way. I didn't mount the bed the way the original Legacy calls for. I actually just used four aluminum extrusion. They're all 400 millimeter, and as you can see, I mounted it. I went ahead and connected to this. Mounted it like it's supposed to, and then connected it. I didn't cut it because why cut it? I don't, it don't make sense to cut it when you have the space for it to expand on. So, and you could at least use the extra space and extrusion to put cool stuff, like, let's say if you wanted to mount it a Voron nozzle cleaner brush, you can mount it here. You can mount it somewhere where the nozzle can reach. You have plenty of space on the side to do that. Let's say if you wanted to mount some other, macro to make the nozzle do some other things, you have the space to do that. So I didn't bother cut it. I just used it the way it was. So this was 4 times by 400 millimeter aluminum extrusion. You can get that off Amazon. It's pretty cheap to get a set of 4 for pretty cheap. So that's what I did, and I mounted it that way. And then use the V1.8 3-point mounting system. So you have to print this out with a spring and a M3 nut to kind of adjust the front of the bed here. And So yeah, so that's what you need. Now in terms of the nitty gritty, here's what you're gonna need now. I did mention 200-watt silicone heater. You're gonna need ABS printed parts, 6 linear rails additionally, 6 linear rod additional from the 4 that you get with the X5SA itself. You're gonna need 6 linear rods. So 4 of them are 400 millimeter on the Y. So the Y axis linear rods are 400 millimeters for this specific setup. For the X axis, so the two that the Toolhead is on, the X axis, those are 450 millimeters linear rods. You can cut it down if you have a machine. I do have a cutting machine, a steel cutting machine that can cut rods. So I bought that personally just so I can have it when I'm building other printers. You're gonna need some, I want to say knuckle nuts or curl nuts. I don't know how you say it, but it's those thumb nuts. It's these weird thumb nuts that Voron uses. Tell me if I'm saying it wrong, correct me if I'm wrong, but that's what those are. You're gonna need some of those for this setup. M3 threaded inserts. You're gonna also need 2209s. Sorry here. And need some 2209. So one of the 2209 stepper driver is for sensorless ohming, as I'm using a modified base. So someone on the Voron Discord modified the base of the Legacy Carriage to accommodate a BL Touch. And because of the accommodation of the BL Touch, there's no longer a space right here to put a X end stop. So in this case, you have to use sensorless ohming to ohm the X, but they did still retain the Y end stop switch. So that's the reason for that. So this is using a BL Touch as the probe here, which is honestly, in my opinion, better than the inductive probe. It just does a better job of staying consistent. You're also going to need a 3-pack of the F695 2RS bearings. Those are the bearings that the Voron uses. You're going to need a 3-pack of them. Even though in the pack you have 10 pieces, but keep in mind 2 pieces make a stack. So you only have 5 stack in one pack. You're gonna need 3 for this because this takes 12 stack of those bearings in order to complete the loop of the Core XY setup. Okay, so you're gonna need 3-pack. You're gonna have a little bit extra left over, but you can always use that for another build or something else. So you're gonna need a 3-pack of those. You're gonna need one 60 by 60 by 25 millimeter fan for the back here. That's what's cooling off the motherboard and the electronics. On the inside, behind that ABS housing. And the board I'm using in here is a SKR 1.4 turbo right now. That's what I'm using for the actual with the setup with this. I'm not using the Big Tree Tech Mini 12846 LCD. You can use it, but I'm running this headless. I'm giving him the option if he wants to, but right now this is just running headless. I'm just using fluid as the clipper interface for now. And I doubt he's gonna want to use it anyways because he's been running headless for a minute now. You're gonna also need a 180 millimeter GT2 belt, and that's for the M4 extruder from Voron. The reason why I'm using a Bowden setup and not a direct drive setup, because of the length of the rods. The length of the linear rods, keep in mind, it's 8 millimeter linear rods, so there's some flex in it. And the problem is that because of that flex, if you put a motor at the back, it's gonna bobble back and forth. So there's this flex in it. Even right now, there's a flex, but it's much lighter, so it's not showing. But what will happen if it goes back and forth really fast, there's gonna be this flex, and that flex is gonna go right in the nozzle. And what that's gonna cause when you try to print fast, you're gonna see these weird lines in your print. It's very ugly. So what I'm saying is that this is not rigid enough to accommodate a direct drive setup. So I would stick to the Bowden setup in this case. And there's nothing wrong with the Bowden setup because, like I said, the M4 shooter is very strong. Very, very strong. Very, very well put together. It's using BMG gears. So the internal is BMG gears. And you're just using the belt loop, the 188 millimeter GT2 belt loop, so the motor can spin the 82 printed gear. So you're definitely going to need that. You're also going to need some Triangle Lab collet clips. So the collet clips here and a collet clip here in order to lock the Bowden tube in place. That's very necessary to use. I wouldn't cheap out. Now, I've seen some people use the BMG collet, so you can take the clips from the collet, but sometimes you can destroy it. So I do recommend you just wait it out and just order it from Triangle Lab. Just order a bunch so that way you don't have to worry about it, and get the proper collet clips. The next thing you're gonna need is 10 linear rod bearings. So the LUMM8s, I think how you say it. Those type of bearings. You need the big ones, the long ones, not the short ones, but you're gonna need the long ones. And you're gonna need to insert it. How I insert my bearings, I use this, one of these clamp things to insert it. Go ahead and wind it in and insert it. That's how I insert it. I would definitely use some grease or some kind of lubricant when you're inserting it, because you don't want to insert it dry and damage the ABS while you're inserting the actual bearings. So remember that. Also, I'm using a Meanwell 350 watt power supply. You can use a 200 watt, but I just decided 350 watts, which is overkill for this type of setup, but it's fine. And then, so the length, this was longer. This was, I think, was a 600 millimeter rod with the existing X5SA. Maybe not 600. It was close to about 580 millimeters rod. I had to cut that down to about 480 millimeters. Okay, so took 100 millimeters off of it in order for it to fit into the printed part here. So there we go. And then I had to cut down the lead screw as well. And the lead screw is 430 millimeters. So I had to cut them down a little bit. So you're just taking a little bit off of them in order for them to fit the size requirement needed to fit in the printed parts. So yeah, so that's what I did. So hopefully that's enough information to show you guys what you want. So really, it's not a ton of stuff to buy. Honestly, you're not going to spend no more than $300 for all the stuff listed here. Okay, that's still cheap comparing to trying to build this from scratch or trying to build like any other Voron from scratch. This is the cheapest one you can get away with by converting your X5SA into a Legacy. It's the cheapest one you can get away with. So, but yeah, so like again, I do recommend the Bowden setup with this build size, just because again, the linear rod is not as rigid as MGN rails, linear rails. So you kind of want to be careful with that because it will get flimsy. The speed is not going to be as high as like a V2 or a 1.8 or a V0, right? Because of just the nature of the linear rods and everything just not being as rigid. So the speed is not going to be as high and fast as you want, but it does print clean. As you can see, it does print very clean. That I give it. So if you tweak your slicer settings real good, you can get some pretty decent prints out of this very well. So far, I don't see any Z banding or any type of Z wobbling, even though I'm printing white filament here. There's not much there. There's some light ringing, but I can also do input shaper, which I did do on this to cancel some of it out. I might just run input shaper again on it just to see, just to help it out again. Because keep in mind, as the belt stretches, keep in mind this, I've been printing on it now for a few days. As the belt stretches, it might affect the input shaping. So I might have to run input shape on it just again, just to realign back the values to make sure that there's no much ringing in the print. But outside of that, guys, again, easy build. I would definitely recommend you use ABS in the setup. Now, you can get away with PETG, don't get me wrong. If you wanted to print this in PETG, you can get away because you're not, the fact that you're not enclosing this printer, like I said, this printer is not meant to be enclosed. I don't care what anybody says. This is just an open printer, like every other printer. So you can get away with PETG in this case, since it's not being exposed to like massive heat, massive ambient temperatures. You can definitely get away with PETG. I would suggest that the fan duct don't print in PETG. I suggest you print the fan duct in ABS so that way it doesn't melt. because when PETG is exposed to 80 degrees temperature at a long period of time, it can tend to warp a little bit. You know, not major, but it will tend to deform just a little bit. So I would definitely print the duct part of the hot end in ABS. But outside of that, everything else can be printed in PETG. I've done it on this channel and it held up perfectly fine. But if you don't, but if you do have the capability of printing in ABS, I would definitely tell you to go the ABS route, number one. PETG, if you don't have any choice and you know you're not going to enclose this printer, like I said, I wouldn't plan on closing it, then you can get away with PETG. PLA is a no-go. Do not print this thing in PLA at all. Don't care what you think, how you feel about this. Do not print this setup in PLA. Yeah, I don't recommend you use PLA for the reason of, yes, while PLA might be rigid, I wouldn't use it for this setup. I just avoid PLA overall to build this printer. Stick with, you know, again, ABS first. The priority is ABS, but if you can't, PETG will be okay. PETG will be okay for this setup. Just remember the duct, make sure the duct is in a higher temp material, and you should be okay. But outside of that, guys, it's again, easy build. Follow the CAD. Just look at where the CAD model is. You can use Fusion 360 Personal to view it, and kind of go from there. But like I said, easy build. At the time I build this, I don't think the manual is out yet still, so I just use the CAD to get it going. But yeah, but I'm gonna put a lot of the stuff here that's required, the extra stuff, in a Amazon affiliate link, so that way that can give me a little kickback and that can help fund my hobby and 3D stuff, and just, you know, discover more information to share with you guys, you know. So yes, so yeah, guys, that's it. Just wanted to share that with you guys. Voron Legacy X5SA conversion. I did promise that I was gonna do something like this. Like I said, I didn't do the live stream because, you know, a lot of distraction in the back end there. So yeah, but anyways, guys, I'll see you in the next one. If there's something I've missed in the video, go ahead and drop a comment in the drop a comment. I'll read it. I usually read all the comments. I'll reply back somehow, some way. And yeah, just remember to like, subscribe, and share the video. We're out almost at 1K. It took forever to get here, but we're slowly climbing. Patience is a virtue. I appreciate you guys. Stay tuned. There's more video on the way, and I'll catch you guys in the next time. Peace.